It's rolling, Josh.
What?
Yeah, it's on. I turned it on.
Like we're going.
I pushed the button. Yeah.
Started? Are you for real?
Yeah, like I did. Like it's recording now, and we only have like an hour left on this SD card, so we really gotta hurry.
Okay,
we gotta hurry this
got
up.
All right. 3.
3.
3.
2.
All right, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Beyond Sunday podcast, where the coffee's strong, the theology's kind of deepish, and the conversations are always better than your last group text thread. If you can think about that.
Is anyone drinking coffee right now?
No, but Evan definitely is drinking a Ghost.
Well, it is strong.
I got the new Ghost peach. Sorry.
Is it good?
It's pretty good.
All right, let's restart.
No, this is great. This is great. Let's keep going.
All right, and around the table today, we have a stellar group of individuals to be bringing you the conversations of the week. Across from me, directly across from me, is Evan Ryan, our middle school pastor.
What's up?
He clapped for himself. And on the mic today, but also mixing on the board, is Tate Wells, back from Disney.
Yeah, hey guys, I didn't know I was going to be here today.
Yeah, Tate, you were kind of tired when you came in last week.
Yeah.
Disney really put you through the ringer.
Yeah, you see, you think, like, you go on a vacation to relax and recharge, unless you go to Disney World. Then that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
And you come back even worse than when you started.
That was a big onset of plantar fasciitis for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Last time I went with my family, that was not fun. But guys, guess what? Now this person has been mentioned on this podcast lots of times, and just to kind of clear the air in the room, we've invited her onto the podcast. Everybody, welcome Alicia Lancaster.
Hey everyone.
Yeah.
I'm just here to correct the grammatical mistakes. That's all I'm here for.
It's too bad Michael's not here. We could have had kind of like a rap battle or something.
Maybe. I just need one red pen today instead of 2 since he's not here.
Right. You brought one red pen for Evan, I'm guessing.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Most likely it's me.
Alicia, you know, Michael kind of gives you a hard time. I kind of went back and listened to a couple of the podcasts, and a lot of the hard just judgments of you came from Michael. I know. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to clear up before we get started today?
You know, Michael has often said that his speech teacher was going to fail him or that he didn't. I fully understand why.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's trying to grow. I'm trying to help him. That's all. I'm a helper.
If you were to take into account all of the times that Michael's preached and rate them on if you've saved him from an embarrassing moment or an embarrassing grammatical moment, what is the percentage of those sermons that you think you've saved him with that red pen?
It's probably 50%.
50%.
Half.
Yeah,
Half of it.
I'd say so.
So I'd like you guys to all thank Alicia next time you see her. We've got to keep Michael kind of reined in a little bit when he preaches, and Alicia helps us out quite a bit with that. So we appreciate you not only doing that for us, Alicia, but that you're also here this morning. And I'm Josh. I'm Josh Hensley. I'm the worship pastor here.
That's true.
And normal here on the podcast. And this is one of my most favorite times of the week, honestly.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. And I always think, what's the best way that we can engage with our church? And I think the podcast is one of the best ways. But one of the things that I really enjoy is talking about and starting the podcast with something that's a little bit humorous, all right? And so last week we had the Judgment Seat Confessions where we handed down the charges and the pastors that would have been charged with those charges. They were all made up.
Right.
Yeah. They were all made up for the most part. But I got a question this week. We're talking about heaven. We're talking about death. Michael talked about heaven and hell this past week. And there was a moment where we talked about laying the crowns at Jesus' feet. All right. And this idea of eternity. And we're building a crown. And the Bible also says we're building a mansion. You know, God is preparing a place, a mansion for us. Maybe not mansion, but he's preparing a place for us in heaven. And a lot of times we talk about the mansion. But I got a question for you guys. If Jesus is preparing a place for you in heaven, what's one ridiculous thing that you hope is in your heavenly mansion?
Okay, I've got one, but it's very non-biblical. Is that okay?
Oh, that's fine. Because this is all make-believe.
Right.
Okay.
This is not going to happen.
Okay. I would want the largest TV screen I could have. 24/7 sports, split screen, so I see all the things happening at
Yeah.
one time. That's
Like
me.
ESPN overload.
Yes.
Every
All the
every
things.
sport?
Every sport. I love all of them. So soccer, hockey, football, basketball, baseball, even the like outdoorsy logging sports, you know, like
Yeah.
where they're chopping the wood and climbing up all those things.
I think that would be fun.
So this is heaven, right? So what happens if like you're there and you sit in front of your big TV screen and you turn on the game, whatever game, and you're watching your favorite team and they lose? Is that like something that can even happen?
I mean, you're glimpsing down to earth, so sure.
Okay. So you still find joy in the loss.
That's hard for me to do.
No pain.
That would be hard.
That is hard for you, Alicia. That's a good answer. I think for mine, I would probably do, even though, you know, I'll have a new body, I think I'll do a gym. I want the biggest gym, all the best equipment, all that stuff. Yeah. Even though I wouldn't really need to do it, but
But you'd already have all the best muscles.
I know, that's what I'm saying,
You
but I would
couldn't even-
I would still use the equipment.
You couldn't even like
Fun.
do reps till failure. You would just
I
keep
would never fail.
Yeah, you just keep going.
Just sit on the bench press all day. Never fail.
That would be pretty sick.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty
Wow.
sick.
That'd be cool. But also, I had thought about this too. So Michael talks about this often, and he's asked me this question before. But he said, you know, when you get to heaven, let's just imagine that, like, as soon as you get there, there's like this movie room, right? And there's all these different screens, and you can just kind of go on a computer, and you can find a scene from the Bible that you want to watch. So I think that'd be really cool if I had a movie room where I could just watch everything that I've read about for so long happen in real time.
Because there are moments in the Bible like,
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
What if it's just like a movie theater? Like
that'd be awesome.
just right there in the middle of heaven.
And you could watch it with the people that you're watching.
Yeah. And then interview them and ask questions.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what, and this doesn't have anything to do with my mansion, but to sit down with Bible, the ones we read about, the
Yeah.
characters, the people, like what was that like to go through that? What was that like to see God do that before your eyes?
Yeah.
And I think that's something I'm looking forward to in heaven. I don't know if I'll get that chance.
Yeah.
I really don't know what heaven's going to be like. All I know
don't
is I'm
either.
going to love it.
It's going to be good. Yeah.
One of the Bible studies I'm doing, they talked about Joshua being at the tent of the tabernacle and that he would linger there when God came down to talk to Moses. And I got to thinking about, can you imagine all the stuff Joshua heard as he listened to the conversation between God and Moses and how cool that would be?
All right, I think in my mansion, there's one thing, especially this time of year, when the weather's changing, and maybe this isn't in my mansion, but this is outside. I want there to be 2 strong trees that are perfectly spaced apart that have a hammock in the middle. And I want it to be perfect weather all the time. The breeze is blowing like 68 degrees, just laying there in the hammock. The sun is like shining on me. That's what I hope that I have.
That'd be pretty nice.
And I just want to stay there for all eternity.
So when I was a little kid, and my mom was teaching me about like what heaven was. And you got to remember, I must have been like 5. So very like simplistic explanation of like what heaven is going to be. I remember sitting there talking to my mom about it. And at the time, my favorite thing ever was Transformers. I loved Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. Like, that was my number one favorite franchise. I tried to get mom and dad to take me to all the movies, even though they were kind of mature.
Yeah.
Those movies are kind of dark nowadays if you watch them. But, like, I loved the cartoons. I loved all of it. And I remember when mom was talking to me about, like, what heaven was going to be and how it was going to be this joyful place where we're happy for the rest of eternity. I was sitting there with my little Transformer toy. Like, do you remember how cool those things were?
Yeah.
The cars that you could turn into the robots.
Yeah.
And so I just remember asking mom, like, Mom, will there be toys in heaven? And so I
There'd
think
be Transformers. Will Optimus Prime be in heaven?
Exactly. So for my younger self, I would want just the coolest Optimus Prime, just like unimaginably awesome, like transforming action.
All of
right there,
all
just-
of the abilities.
Yes.
In
Yeah,
a
like
toy
it,
form.
like it's like
What if you could just have Optimus Prime there?
like him himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's even better actually. Yeah,
God, you've heard Tate.
full size semi truck that turns into a giant robot and is my friend.
Wow, those are some amazing things.
Good job, guys.
I don't believe heaven's going to be anything like that. But anyway, we did talk about heaven on Sunday.
We did. Yeah, Michael covered heaven. He covered our hope in heaven. That was kind of the title of his sermon, and he talked about three main points on Sunday that were really good. You know, heaven is our hope because it's real and it's being prepared. That's kind of what we're talking about now. Jesus is preparing a place for us right now in heaven. Point number 2 is this: heaven is our hope because it's our home and our true home. We're not at home here on this earth. We are awaiting our real home in heaven at one point. And then point number 3, which was kind of the whole point of the message. You know, heaven is our hope because it's one of 2 options. So Michael Sunday talked about the difference between heaven and hell, and the reality that there is only those 2 options, and everyone will go to one of those 2 places at some point. So, really good sermon, important topic to talk about, especially right before Easter Sunday.
Yeah. You know, it's easy for us to fantasize about heaven, kind of like we did
Right.
With the mansion thing. But I think what I stepped away from Sunday is it kind of snapped me back into reality in a sense of heaven is real. Mm-hmm. Heaven is our home, is what Michael said. And that means that the things of this earth are only temporary.
Yeah.
You know, when he talked about like, man, when I'm on vacation, those last 2 days are like, I just want to be home.
Yeah.
And that longing for home, I think with everything going on in our lives, the pain, the suffering, the death, the ups and the downs, heaven is the place where all of that is made right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No longer pain, no longer death, no longer ups and downs, but presence with God. And that feels like home to me.
Mm-hmm.
Something I picked up on in the office Monday after Sunday and after Michael gave that sermon was there were a lot of emotions. I mean, even Sunday, with the awesome response that we saw and just getting to spend some time in the small groups and stuff. There's a huge amount of like these feelings that we all have around heaven, and I feel like what Michael really made everyone start to think about is that we all have people that we want to see make it there.
Yeah.
Like a resident meeting the next day, Monday morning, was a huge emotional time, I think, for all 4 of us and Paxton, because each of us after Sunday had people on our mind that we were like, man, like, I want to see that person get to heaven. I want to see this friend of mine get to heaven. But we know that
Not all of them
that's
will.
not, that's not something that's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you talk, you're exactly right, Josh. We like to fantasize the idea of heaven, and it's this kind of big picture that we have in our minds. And a lot of times we just kind of think like we have it in the back of our minds, like, yeah, that's where most people are going. But when you talk about that, the reality is there's two options. We know a lot of people who are not going to make it to heaven. So I think it was awesome to see that response on Sunday. People just coming up to the altar and praying for their lost friends or lost family members that they knew needed to realize this. And,
Right. Because what was it Michael said in his sermon? Like, at most 1/3 of the population right now would make it to heaven.
I think it's always, honestly, I think it's always less than what we really think.
Exactly.
Well, 1/3 would be proclaimed Christians.
That would be if everyone who says that they're
Right.
Christian.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I think the other side of that is this balance and this, I guess it comes from the tension of heaven and hell. Like, it's two extremes, honestly.
Yeah.
It's hard to even imagine what heaven's going to be like, but it's even the same to just fear hell.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times Christians, non-Christians, maybe early on in what leads you to salvation is the fear of hell.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's not what God intended. That's not something that should lead us to heaven.
Yeah.
Because really what God did for us, yes, heaven is real, yes, hell is real. But it was never meant to be the reason that we run to God.
Right.
Yeah.
Hell was never meant to be something that God saved us from, but heaven was always meant to be something that God saved us to.
Well, in reality, hell was not created for us. Hell was created for Lucifer, for the fallen demons. That's what hell was created for. Hell was never a place that humans should have to go. That's why he provided a way out of hell for us. So it shouldn't be, something that we necessarily fear. Now we get that fear. Like you said, Josh, that's what a lot of younger people especially first come to know Christ, because I'm scared about the part of hell. But really, we should just be hopeful in the hope of heaven, more so than anything.
And, God doesn't want people to go to hell.
No.
Peter talks about it in 2 Peter 3. It says, the Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some people think. No, he is being patient for your sake.
Yep.
He does not want anyone to be destroyed, but he wants everyone to repent. The whole goal of heaven is that you would understand his love for you and the depravity that is in you to sin. You are a slave to sin. You are born into sin. And we get that moment in our lives where salvation is so clear in front of us that we get to make the decision. God gives us that decision point. Are you going to trust me? Are you going to call me Savior? Are you going to love me? And the reward for that is heaven.
I get a sneak peek at the messages with the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
And as I'm making the slides and skimming through there, I always look, and there's always something that stands out to me in the message. And for Michael's Sunday, like when I read it, I was like, this is going to be the thing. And it's where he talked about the heartfelt hope that as a Christian we should have towards heaven, but also the heartfelt urgency that we should have for those we know that aren't saved yet. And that statement, like every time he said it in the message, I mean, I was back there running video, but it made me stop and think every service about different people that I need to have that urgency for to bring them to Christ.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing about us having our 3, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was thinking about and praying for throughout the day was my 3 and more. Like you said, it brought more people to my mind, talking about the urgency that we should have behind it. And I think it was successful. I think, every single service, we know you all weren't there, but we had a plethora of people up there praying for their lost friends and family members. And I know that from that, at some point, we'll see the fruits of it.
God hears those prayers.
Yeah.
Like, some of my favorite things is, we're singing the song, and some people moved immediately. Michael said, as soon as the music starts, you move.
Some people move before the music
say
started.
Some people move before the music, but some of my favorites are the ones that wrestled.
Yeah.
All of us thinking of somebody, but those ones that wrestled in the chairs of, I know I need to pray for these people.
Yeah.
Out of their comfort zone. And, you could tell walking up, they were not comfortable walking up, but that freedom of standing before God, there's nothing magical about the altar, but it is a reverent moment where you stand before God and you say, God, hear my prayer. I love this person and I want this person to know you the way that I know you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we feel like God is trying to trap us in this judgment.
Yeah.
We feel like the whole reason that heaven and hell is there is because God wants to trap us. He wants to make us make a decision. No, what God really wants us to do is to understand his grace, to understand who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times he uses us believers to speak into those around us.
Yeah.
The only way that people see the grace of God lived out in their life many times is through the ones that live it out daily around them. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times in my prayers, I'm saying, God, let the people around me see your love, your grace, and your mercy through me. Because in a world that is not seeking after you, that's what's bringing hope. And that's what brings the hope of heaven when people realize who Jesus is.
Yeah.
When we think about people that we know that are lost, and we all know somebody, or we all know multiple people, this is almost a question I have for myself that I want to hear y'all's answers on. I don't necessarily have a right or a wrong answer to this, but so we know that we're supposed to pray for these people, right? But at what point do we have to take initiative, or how do we know that God is calling us to reach those people through more than just praying for them? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how do we know when we're supposed to take those steps to really seek out those people that we know need Christ and help them?
I mean, I think we always are. I mean, I think prayer is the most important thing we can do, because I've seen in times, I've heard stories and seen it where people have prayed for maybe a family member for over 20, 30 years at a time, and eventually they come to Christ, right? But it wasn't just prayer that person did. It was also the inviting, the little conversations that you have. I mean, God doesn't call us just to pray. He calls us to act in what we do. And most of the time, we're praying for somebody in our life that's close to us, right? So who else better to reach that person, to have those conversations than you?
Nice.
And you might be praying and saying, God, send somebody to them that, could have this conversation and lead them to Christ. But more times than not, you're that person that needs to go. So I would say act, as soon as you start praying. As soon as you feel that nudge, go talk to them, say something.
I think that's the benefit of the impact card.
Yeah.
Like when we do the impact card, we're putting 3 names on the card that the goal is that we pray for them daily. But probably the more eternal goal is that we would intentionally interact with them in a way that would start gospel conversations.
And if you have that card, church, that's your in right there. Go to them and say, hey, I don't know if you know much about church. Maybe they don't go to church. They're not a believer. But our church does this thing called this impact card. And we're supposed to pray for 3 people in our lives that, don't know Jesus. And as soon as our church said, we need to write names down on these cards, I thought of you. And I want you to know that I've been praying for you, and I'm here to talk about any conversations you want to have or anything like that. Like, that's your in right there to go talk to them if they're on your card, and it's really easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all come from those days of, we used to call it faith. There were just different discipleship tools to start conversations, and a lot of times it felt like a cold call.
Yeah,
I remember walking down the street on a Sunday night before church because we did discipleship 101, or I forget what it was called, but with my mom and dad, knocking on a door. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're down here at Vine Grove Baptist Church, and we just are in your community and wanted to know if you knew Jesus Christ. That's a cold call, man. And that kind of interaction was not as fruitful, I think, as what it could have been.
Yeah.
If we develop relationships with those that God already puts in our lives. We have to become more aware, we have to become more intentional, and we have to become more relational with people. Mm-hmm. If you don't take that opportunity, no, you don't have to hang out with them every day. Yeah. No, you don't have to invite them to your house, but, lunchtime table conversation.
Right.
One cubicle to the next. Hey, what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be aware too that it's not going to happen possibly the first time you talk to him.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, you have to stay persistent and continue to be vocal and witness to them and not get discouraged yourself. And I think that's the hard part. You think, well, I talked to him about it and they weren't receptive.
So I just had this student that just went home, or just went on spring break. She went to go visit her dad, who lives in Florida, and she knew that her dad and her brothers weren't Christian. They actually are Jewish or something like that. She's not exactly sure, but she's burdened for them, like, very badly. And she had kind of in her mind, I figured, after talking with her, like, she wanted to go down there and have a conversation with them and convert them, basically. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, like, that does not need to be your hope right now. Your hope needs to be to go down there, plant a seed, continue to build your relationship with them, and pray for them every single day. And we might see something happen with them years later. It doesn't often happen to where you go and it's this big moment, like one conversation and someone's crying and they, just turn over their life to Christ. Right. It happens in little moments throughout a long period of time, and then you see the fruit of it. Mm-hmm. So,
sometimes you're just a part of the whole process.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes you're not the whole person that, leads them to Christ or whatever. You might just be a small part. And that's what your prayers are doing, or putting other people in their lives that can also speak into that. So,
well, and I think that's why it's so important for us to live with that hope of heaven that Michael talks about. Mm. As Christians, we have to live a life that looks different than the world. If we continue to look like the world and are bogged down by all the things that are going on around us and talk like the world and think like the world, then we do not possess the hope that Christ has put inside of us that can make those conversations happen with the people that God's placed in our lives.
Right.
They should notice a difference. I noticed the way that you live your life. You are not crushed by the things of this world, but
I noticed the joy.
Right. You have joy. You have this thing about you that when you walk into the room, it's just a pleasure to be around you. That's so much different than anything else I experience. Mm-hmm. What a conversation starter.
Yeah.
Where is your joy?
Yeah. How
do you live it out? And you know what that leads us into? Easter. We're in the middle of Easter week this week, guys. Yeah. Extravaganza's over. Awesome reports. You'll hear more about them coming up. We're still running the numbers. We're still tabulating all the things. But it was an amazing time once again where our community got to be with us on that Sunday night. For all of you that volunteered, thank you. Could not have done it without you. I love looking across the parking lot and the fields and just seeing all the smiling faces of our people interacting with the community. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And my prayer going into that night was that there would be a seed planted, or there would be a seed watered, or there would be harvest that came out of extravaganza. And I'm looking forward to what God's going to do, maybe this week, maybe in the future, of more stories of people that get involved at Newark Fellowship. But we got a couple other things coming up this week. This Friday, April 18th, we have 2 Good Friday services, and they will be 11:10 and 12:10. You may ask, why the weird times? Well, that gives you time to take off from work during your lunch and come worship at the church. So 11:10, if you can get here by then, or 12:10. And then we're also going to let you out 10 minutes prior to your lunch hour being over and send you home with some food.
Dude, I don't know what it is about Good Friday, but those Chick-fil-A box lunches are like the best Chick-fil-A you ever have.
Immaculate.
It's way better than when you go to the store for some reason. Maybe I'm just like so hungry that day. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Guys, ever since high school, they used to serve Chick-fil-A box lunches. I love those chips.
oh, dude, yeah, the waffle
Almost more than
chips.
life.
Yeah.
Now they're
They're so
available
good.
on the app.
They are.
They're not as special.
I think they're just as special.
You just can't get them on the app. You just have to wait.
I'll order them on the app sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Chick-fil-A chips, waffle chips, are reserved for Good Friday for me. So,
Yeah.
Me too. It's the only
can
time
do
I
that.
eat them.
yeah. But I always kind of guess, am I going to get a cookie or a brownie? And That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm excited about this Friday.
You know what? I'm happy with either.
I am too.
both
They're
good.
both
I didn't
amazing.
realize there were 2 different options.
Yep, there is.
Wow.
But anyway, that's Friday. And then Sunday, Easter.
That's right.
Easter's coming. Y'all,
Yep.
I'm looking forward to this week.
Me too.
It's going to be so much fun. And the service on Easter is always a really special one, just being all together. And I think this year with 2 services at 9 and 10:30, it's going to really allow us as a church to be together.
Yeah.
And splitting across 3 services is hard because each service is a different a church in a sense.
Yeah.
People go to the same service each and every week. I think this time it forces us to kind of mix it up a little bit. And I'm excited to see what God's going to do with each of those services on Sunday. And I know that we already have quite a few baptisms slotted
That's
for
right.
that day. Mm-hmm. We're going to do spontaneous baptisms too. I think last year we started with 8
Yes.
planned baptisms, and we
Yeah.
ended the day with 22.
22. We had some after the 3rd service.
Yeah, people stuck
Couldn't
around.
get in, yeah.
People that were working at the Bruce. were
Oh
going,
yeah.
"Guys,
Yeah.
I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Never know what God's going to do. That's coming up this week, so make sure you guys put that on your calendar. Make an intentional effort to join. Invite somebody. Like, such an easy time. If it's been proven, if you invite somebody to Christmas or Easter, the likelihood of them coming goes up.
I saw today that it's like an 80% chance that they'll say
Wow.
yes. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I read that today. So,
And one of the best lines, I think, is, hey, come sit with me.
yeah.
I got a seat.
Yeah.
We're going to save seats and do that. See what God's going to do with those relationships in your life. But one of the other things that I think is a benefit of us having Alicia on the podcast today is Alicia is involved in our NWF Women's Ministry.
Yes, sir.
And we actually have a big event coming up, Alicia.
We do. We're keeping it going for Easter, sort of. Saturday, April 26th, we're having a feast virtual event. That's Christy McClelland will be leading that, and doors open at 8:30. Teaching and worship will start at 9. Cost is $35. That includes lunch, and you can register on our app. It'll be a great day.
Please register.
Yes, please
Alicia will
do.
get mad.
So what if you aren't quite sure what your Saturday is going to look like, and it opens up? Can you still come on
You
that
can still
Saturday?
come. We are going to plan for some extra folks. So if you can't pre-register, we just may not have a lunch for you. You might have to.
We won't have a feast. Are you actually feasting?
We are actually going to be giving out some challah bread and some figs.
Oh, can I come?
That sounds delicious. But that's coming up. You said April 26th. So
April
this is this next Saturday.
Next Saturday. Yes.
All right. We got a lot going on at Newark, and summer's coming. And we're excited to take one week at a time. But I am looking forward to what God's going to do over the next few weeks. And we are so excited that you joined us for the podcast today and stuck with us. Pray about your 3.
Yes.
What is God going to do through you in their lives? And then maybe you can report or baptize them like
Right.
we've seen happen. I love when people say, this was one of my 3.
Had one just this Sunday.
Yeah, you did.
Service.
Very cool.
But thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Farewell.